नमस्कार दर्शक मित्रों, फिर एक बार हमारी शाम की इस सभा में आपका स्वागत है। आप जानते हैं पिछले कई समय से हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं G20 पे। पहले G20 होने वाला था, तब इसके क्या असर हो सकती है, कौन आएगा कौन नहीं आएगा। उसके बाद जब G20 हुआ तो उस अफ्रीकन ब्लॉक जुड़ा, G21 हो गया। पुतिन नहीं आए, शी जिनपिंग नहीं आए। इन बीच चाइना ने अपने जो नए नक्शे जाहिर किए उसमें अरुणाचल प्रदेश को और अक्साई चीन को चाइनीज टेरिटोरी बताया। अनाउंस हुआ पोर्ट एंड रोड इनिशिएटिव का। वो भी एक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एडिशन है जो अगर हो गया तो उससे काफी बदलाव आ सकता है, काफी फर्क पड़ सकता है। अमेरिका हमारे नजदीक आया, मगर अमेरिका के पास पैसा नहीं है। अमेरिका बात कर सकता है ज्यादा से ज्यादा, बाकी वहां भी इलेक्शन आ रहा है और शी जिनपिंग की तरह शी जिनपिंग का इलेक्शन हो गया, इनकी आने वाली है। और बाइडेन की परिस्थिति जो है वहाँ, उनकी पॉपुलैरिटी का भी अभी कोई ग्राफ नीचा ही जा रहा है। और हो सकता है कि जो उनके डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी है, वो पार्टी के सदस्यों ने भी बाइडेन को बदलने की, प्रेसिडेंशियल कैंडिडेट की हैसियत से डेमोक्रेटिक उम्मीदवार नहीं बनाने की मांग की है। 48% of the people from within the Democratic Party want that the presidential candidate should not be Biden. तो ये सब मुद्दे हैं जो G20 के आसपास घूमते फिरते कहीं ना कहीं अपनी असर छोड़ेंगे। आज हम बात करेंगे। बात करने के लिए हमारे पास हमारे जो विशेष अतिथि हैं, वो नेवल कॉमोडोर उत्पल बोरा साहब है। बोरा साहब, हमारे गुजरातियों के लिए भी गौरव की बात है कि नौसेना में कोमोडोर जैसी उच्चतम पद पर वो पहुंचे। हमारे सैन्य में एक्टिव उन्होंने योगदान दिया। अपने आप में पूरा सामरिक ज्ञान रखते हैं और जो चीजें जिसकी क्या इम्पैक्ट हो सकती है उसकी एनालिसिस करने में भी वोरा साहब माहिर है। कई अरसे से वोरा साहब को हम नहीं देख रहे थे, क्योंकि विषय ऐसे आते थे कि जिनमें हम उनके ज्ञान का उपयोग नहीं कर सकते थे। तो अब फिर से मुझे लगता है कि वोरा साहब हमारे साथ जुड़ते रहेंगे और आज फिर से उनकी शुरुआत है। वोरा साहब, आपका स्वागत है।
थैंक यू सो मच सर।
हमारा रियल डिबेट के आप विशिष्ट अतिथि करीब करीब रेगुलर रहे हैं और आपके जरिए हमने कई ऐसे विषय जो हैं उन पे ज्ञान पाया है, जो जिससे सामरिक ज्ञान की जरूरत है, हथियार की प्रोक्योरमेंट है या बॉर्डर सिचुएशन है। तो आज आप फिर से जुड़े हैं, हमें आनंद है, हम आपका स्वागत करते हैं और आशा करते हैं कि हम मोर फ्रिक्वेंटली आपसे बात करते रहेंगे।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक्स।
चर्चा की शुरुआत करते हैं। G20 में कुछ इंसिडेंट्स हुए, उनका अभी तक हमने G20 को करीब करीब कई कंपार्टमेंट में डाइसेक्ट करके चर्चा किया है। आज हम इसकी चर्चा करेंगे हमारी विदेश नीति के संदर्भ में और संरक्षण के संदर्भ में क्या होने जा रहा है। पहला प्रश्न मेरा ये है आपको कि हम आज ये समय अमेरिका से हम नजदीक आते हुए दिखे, रशिया हाजिर नहीं रहा। रशिया से हमारे दोस्ताना संबंध रहे, मगर रशिया ये समय न तो उपस्थित रहा, न तो रशिया अभी वो रशिया है जो रशिया को हम महासत्ता की हैसियत से जानते थे। आज तक हमारा रवैया रहा कि हम नॉन अलाइड रहेंगे, हम किसी के साथ नहीं, हम अलग से रहेंगे और परिस्थिति के मुताबिक ऑन मेरिट हम कोई भी मुद्दे का सपोर्ट या विरोध करेंगे। अब आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ये क्लियर होता जा रहा है कि हम अमेरिका और वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज जो है उनके ब्लॉक की ओर झुक रहे हैं। चले नहीं गए हैं तो ठीक बात है, मगर झुक रहे हैं उसमें तो कोई शक नहीं। तो इसका असर क्या होगा? एक और चीन, रशिया, ईरान की, सऊदी अरेबिया, ये सब देश है, और एक और भारत और इसके साथी देश जो है, जापान है और अमेरिका और यूरोपियन कंट्रीज है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया है। तो क्या भारत अब नॉन अलाइन नहीं रहेगा? आप मानते हैं कि भारत आहिस्ता आहिस्ता अब खिसक रहा है और एक दिन हम पाएंगे उसको वो ये एक्सिस का भाग है, अमेरिका जो विच इज लेड बाय अमेरिका?
Sir, सबसे पहले तो very kind of you, or so kind of you for such kind words about me. So it increases my responsibility manifold, in this interaction. So I have to be very careful, and making sure that I do not let you down. Now, having said that, sir, the issues जो आपने raise किए हुए हैं, it is very, very important issue from the, geopolitics, real politicking, and in the internal politics of India, when, at a time when the whole world is, standing on the crossroads. And I've always said that the situation that was more or less between the period 1942 to 1947 is more or less is emerging in a worldwide scenario. And therefore the kind of the power equilibrium, whether it is at a global level or a regional level or at a sectoral level, they more or less they are throwing up a very, very dangerous signal. Because if a country is posing a military challenge, then yes, probably there are ways and means to dissect that and probably put everything into the right perspective. But because of the military intervention, when there are other diplomatic or economic or industrial or overall well-being of the of the world and in the world's population, that comes into the forefront. So हमको बहुत ही maturely we have to look at the entire the strategic scenario, because you have to take care of the historical perspective. You also have to make sure that you do not make a hasty decision in the current perspective, and you got to be a bloody fine analyst to make sure that you did not carry it forward for the futuristic the perspective, and there you make a mistake, and therefore your foreign policy, defense policy, your regional policy, your global policy can get into a terrible mess, and it takes a time for you to come out of that mess. So we are in that kind of a situation globally, regionally, and even locally, when we see it from the point of India's perspective. Now, what you have said, I mean, let us see this, that if the USA and the NATO countries, if they stop aiding the war effort of Ukraine, the war will come to a halt in maybe 15 days to months time. But that will not happen, because of the perspective that the USA holds, that now Russia has to be demolished and China has to be tackled in a certain manner so that we can contain China till the time we have demolished Russia in totality. Probably there, the Biden and the Biden administration, they made a big mistake, that a power like China can ever be demolished. And many of the the foreign policy the czars, the so-called the diplomats and foreign secretaries and all, at times is amazing to come and say certain things about Russia, that Russia is a power which is of the yesterday, We don't have to worry about it. And particularly, in the Indian context, where Indian military power, even in today's context, is, up to the extent of 55 to 65% dependent on Russia. Whether Russia, continues to support us, in the current, the imbroglio that they themselves are in, that we will come at a later stage. But America and Americans' economy, people are forgetting that it is, largely depends on the techno-military or a civil military complex, industrial complex that they have created within themselves. And those, the powers are so powerful that politics, in USA and in NATO perspective, it always evolves or, hinges around, this civil military technical complex that America holds so near and dear to them. And that is why the billions of dollars are being pumped into Taiwan, into Ukraine, into NATO, and making sure that though the NATO is economically getting crushed, but America is not, paying attention to that. Because America is saying that, look, even as per the NATO charter of 1947 to 1949 and beyond, is a militarily or geopolitically will take care of you. Therefore, you continue to be, eating out of our palms, and we will call the shots, and you will be a, the second-hand citizen as far as the, the global perspective is concerned. Now people have started realizing that America is playing a dirty game, and therefore the, the many European countries, they have realized that this is nothing but an arms business, and America wants to flourish on the arms business by putting Zelensky and Ukraine in the forefront and taking a pot shot at Russia. Yesterday, when the G20 was meeting in Delhi and before the Delhi declaration was getting passed, sir, would you know that Mr. Putin was holding the election in the Russian-held territory of the Donbas, and the Luhansk and, and the eastern corridor, that they are that they have conquered. Now, how much of Ukraine is in physical custody of Putin? It is 23 to 24%. That means 1/5 of Ukraine. How can you defeat Russia in this kind of situation? And people have realized Mr. Putin's word in almost 20 months back. Please try and remember. He said that as far as the NATO expansion to Russian borders are concerned, I am very clear in my mind that the Russia's sovereignty and Russian people's safety and security are non-negotiable. And for that, I and Russian authorities will not hesitate to go to any extent. He told the world leaders, do everything possible, but do not make a mistake of putting boots on Ukraine, on the grounds of Ukraine. If you do that, I will go nuclear. Now, if anybody has got the courage, prove, Mr. Putin wrong. Nobody, till now when we are talking, nobody has directly put the boots on the grounds of Ukraine. That is the power of nuclear Russia. And therefore, to say that Russia is gone, Russia is demolished, we can demolish Russia is, I think, it is a, very, very preemptive and a hasty decision. Look at sanctions, what they impose on Russia. Russian sanctions have now started hitting more Europe and even to the, Americans. They have started realizing. And that is why the subdued, the American, perspective and the NATO countries' perspective as a G7 bloc in the G20 deliberation, which was held in Delhi. Mr. Lavrov very clearly told, if there is a word Russia in any kind of declaration in any form, make sure, that it does not happen, but if it is there, we will scuttle it. And therefore, when the Delhi declaration was, ready and tabled and accepted, probably in diplomatic sense, in absolute sense, the only power other than India would have been happy was, Russia. And in Bali declaration, at least Russia was named. So therefore, whether we call it, the declaration was watered down or not watered down, that will be discussed, in next 8 to 9 months. But the fact of the matter is that the Russian word as a word as such was not mentioned. And therefore, Mr. Lavrov was very happy. Russian delegation was very happy. The Russian Sherpa was very happy. And if Russia was happy, China was happy. And if both were happy, then America also realized that with the African Union coming into the place, the Middle East at this moment of time, I mean, not fully on the G7 side. The best way to do is to keep mum, keep quiet, and go along with the flow of the water. And that is why visibly the American leadership and the European leadership, they were, though they never never protested, but we have to wait and watch as to coming months what kind of statements are emerging from the American and the European capitals. So that is the first perspective. Therefore, I would say to the extent, I would go to the extent of saying, and allow me to stick my neck out, based on my, the personality that you have known me, that if India has made a decision कि तमें जे कहो छो कि धीरे धीरे इंडिया वो खिसक रहा है और वो it is going to the American side, there is no problem. We can do that because after all, America is as of now a very dominant power in a multipolar world. So therefore, in multipolarity has to be retained. America, there is no doubt is a dominant, power in a multipolar world, and Russia, as of now, is fighting against more or less the 3/4 of the world. We can take a chance in the Indo-China bilateral relations. We can go and take the side, or we can be with the Americans. But I would request the Indian leadership, the both political, diplomatic, and military leadership, to make sure that what you are doing, I hope you have made up your mind. Because after all, America is not your neighbor. The Europe is not your neighbor. Quad, we have very clearly stated that Quad is not China-centric. The External Affairs Minister has made a statement that it is not a defense mechanism. And the last part is that China is your immediate neighbor, is a nuclear neighbor. It is a $19 trillion economy. The External Affairs Minister goes on record, and is very rightly so. He has mentioned that two statement of his you cannot lose sight of. The first statement is that the China is a $19 trillion economy. How am I supposed to fight them? And the second statement that he has made is that to the Chinese leadership, in a politico-diplomatic military engagement of 18 nature, 18 talks, that was held, they said nothing is normal between us till the border issues are resolved. And the other side, the China has ensured that the entire LAC is fully activated. Underline this word, fully activated. And we have also fully activated in response. Therefore, the economic repercussions, politico-military repercussions, politico-diplomatic repercussions between Indo-China relations must be understood in totality by the Indian leadership. If there is, we have to ask ourselves a question that if the balloon goes up, or should something terrible situation take place, then it is not only the Himalayas, the confrontation and containing China will matter. If it rolls over into Indian Air Force and Chinese PLA Air Force and PLA Navy, and in the Indian Navy, in the overall context stretching up to Andaman Nicobar Seas, Straits of Malacca, South China Seas, and Indo-Pacific, then do we at this moment of time have that kind of a military capability to take on China in a total confrontation? And if the confrontation is not the word, and a containment of China is the word, then do we want to play in the hands of America? So, these are the issues that, these are not small issues. These are very, very big issues. And will America, rather than doing business with us, will they make sure that India is not let down? Because American Secretary of State, Mr. Antony Blinken, 2 days prior to the Indian Prime Minister's visit to USA in Washington DC, he was sitting in Beijing, and he said that we do not oppose one China policy on Taiwan, and we will never ever disagree with China. And as far as the US-China trade is concerned, China, we have no intention to contain China. Now, these are these are the kind of statements you cannot lose sight of, or you cannot develop strategic blindness, and you cannot get emotional, because naivety and being gullible is not the hallmark or a virtue in the defense or defense foreign policy. We have to be very careful. What are we doing? If you want to go in a America way, there is no problem. But make sure that America stands by you, in the hours of crisis in totality. If that is not the case, then China is your right, across your adversary, a military adversary, political adversary, diplomatic adversary, and also the nuclear neighbor. So, if the situation becomes little hot or uncomfortable or uncanny, then it should not be a situation that, it can put us into a serious trouble. So just pinch yourself once or twice and make sure that what we are doing is on the correct path. There is no doubt. This is my defense, the analysis. And there could be, I'm sure the Indian political and diplomatic leadership behind the closed doors must have discussed all these things. Because on the other side, the AUKUS, in that we have no say whatsoever at this moment of time. And America has not given any kind of importance at this moment of time to Australia. And Australia has also not openly, shown that, the kind of, the scenario in anti-Chinese way, so-called anti-Chinese way. So therefore, we have to be very, very careful. Now, the Japan and Saudi Arabia, this, we will, cover one by one. The Japan and, Russia, they are not on a good terms. But Japan is doing all these things because after the Second World War, the safety and the security and sovereignty of Japan willy-nilly lies in the hands or in the domain of Americans. And even as we speak, the Pacific Fleet, it operates from Japan and Japan ports, and the Japanese air bases. In that, the US, Air Force is very actively dominantly operates from there. Therefore, even when Mr. When the the so-called tension, during the time of the U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi visit to Japan took place, and America, put up a mighty show of 113 aircrafts, supporting or escorting Nancy Pelosi's aircraft. Most of the aircraft flew from the carrier battle group of the US Navy, and majority of them, they were also from the Japanese air bases. So Japan is virtually a NATO ally and an American ally. The Japan is not allowed to develop its defense capability beyond a certain stage as per the Second World War, the guidelines. So Japan has to be in the, જેને કહેવાય કે અમેરિકાના ખોળામાં બેસી જવું પડે. So, from the economic point of view, when Japan also is supporting us, we have to be very careful in the Indo-Pacific and the seas of Japan, that up to what level they will go against China. And because America has said that we are not going to contain China in any way, because they are our biggest trading partner. So what are we talking about? And China also happens to be our largest trading partner with the largest trading deficit of $112 billion. And we have, as of now, not taken any action on that. So to go anti-China, we have to, the political leaderships and political, activism, we have to do it with very, very mature manner. Because if that does not happen, it can leave a very, very bad taste in our mouth. And we have to be prepared for it. If we are doing it intentionally, no problem. Because then we know that we have done our homework. But it should not happen that we are caught, in the euphoria of, the Delhi Declaration, and then things can go wrong. And America sees other way around, and there is nobody to hold our hand. It will be a very sad day for us. So we have to be very, very careful on that. Now, the issue that you have raised regarding the very, strategically important road and port network from, Indian West Coast and passing through the Persian Gulf, Straits of Hormuz, and entire passing through the UAE, Saudi Arabia, maybe Israel. I don't know how Israel will react to it, and will also join on I2U2, or it will leading down right up to Europe. We have to take a note that today Mr. Erdogan, the Turkish president, has issued a very difficult statement on this network, and he has said that it is not that this road and port network will go through. Now it is it has got an enormous the economic package. At this moment of time, only the accord has been signed, but the details are not yet out. Whether all the countries how will they decide, what will be the fragmentation of the economic package, what will be the total economic package, how will it be shared, what will be the time frame, and ultimately how it will get rolled out, and whether the World Economic Forum, the international monetary funds, they are also, though they've said that they will support, but in what form, that we have to see. Now, as against that, we have to see the BRI, so that it may give us little more clarity in our thought process. BRI was also almost $100 billion the project. It was also launched with great fanfare, and China was very confident that it will see through, and China's name will always come in golden letters in the large part of the world, because the number of countries they were supporting at that moment of time in the BRI, they were definitely greater than this particular road and port project. But what ultimately has turned out to be, and debt restructuring, that is, you are an economist, so you will be able to throw more light on that. The debt restructuring, which was one of the fundamental projects, and the climate the change project, where $100 billion were supposed to be put on the table, till date there is no clarity. So therefore, if the climate change is not mentioned, the clear-cut guidelines have not been defined, target dates and target years have not been defined, modalities have not been defined in all this in climate change. Neither the work is in progress on this strategic road project, though it is a great project and we must achieve it. But how do we achieve it? Who will fund it? India doesn't have that kind of a backbone. So is America. Let's be very honest. America is not in that kind of a framework where America can do a large amount of funding. Neither Saudi Arabia has lots of money, petrodollars. But to what extent the Saudi crown prince will go and be benevolent and put money along with the UAE and other European states, that we'll have to see. Europe doesn't have money for its own existence. Europe economy is down. Putin has said that if you do not end the war, because of the fertilizer, the grain security, or the energy security, I will finish off the the European Union. You will be nowhere. Now, whether that happens or not, but it has started showing it on ground. Because the entire countries of the bunch of countries of the European Union are in a terrible state, and they are falling off the chessboard one after the other from their own pegging. The UK was the last one, where it fell down from the third the largest economy to the fifth largest economy. So now only the saving grace is their per capita income, which is higher, though they are falling down in the overall ranking of 1 to 10. But that's only a saving grace. If that happens, and if nobody has been able to put money on the table, then it may start with a great fanfare, but will it be able what they call it, economically sustainable or a viable project in the long run? And if that does not happen, then what do we do? Because on the other side, the Chabar project also, which was so close to us and our diplomats, and from the strategic point of view, it faced a tremendous amount of headwinds, and it's not only a good situation, though we are trying to come out of it, the rail link and and the Central Asian Republic, all the countries that we are trying to take them along with us. But those countries also economically and militarily, they depend largely on Russia. And if we are going to neglect Russia and neglect Russia-China nexus, then what happens to the immediate neighborhood? That also we have to take into consideration. So in overall, and then the most important point that we should also not forget, that in the Middle East, when we are drumming up this issue, is a good thing. But and I hope it happens that way and it meets our strategic objective. But what happens if Iran does not play the ball? So the best of the effort of China to bring Saudi Arabia and Iran on the same board, and Israel and Saudi Arabia on the same board, that also is to be seen. Because there is one theory or one school of thought that they say that no matter what happens, but Israel and Saudi Arabia, they will never sit together on the same table. It is out of question. But in the strategic domain or strategic canvas, the imponderables always happen, and strange fellows always become the best of the bedfellows. So that is the mark of the diplomacy. But we have to see, wait and watch as to how the Middle East and the African Union plays out the entire game. Because African Union coming as a 21st member, the bunch of 55, 56 countries, is very good. And we will be able to bring G20 out of the clutches of G7, and they will be supporting India. But to what extent? Because after all, they need money. And how much economic and financial support India will be able to pay to the African Union when compared to China? Chinese Xi Jinping and Chinese diplomats, they are, already, they've made African Union and Middle East their second home. Every third day, they've positioned themselves, including Maldives. So therefore, they are trying their best to lure away the African Union and African and in the entire continent and the Middle East to their side. Xi Jinping was sitting in Middle East and Saudi Arabia. And that is why the relations between bilateral relations between Saudi Arabia and United States came to a almost lowest level, despite their the defense relation of a great nature. So it's what I say is that it's a hard world, and in this hard world, one cannot start giving sweeping statements on just one declaration. The declaration has happened in Delhi. It's a feather in our cap. There is no doubt. A great amount of diplomatic effort has gone into it. But that diplomatic declaration now is a test, for us as to how we implement it, how we convert that to our advantage, and whether ASEAN, ARF, or the Southeast Asia, and to what extent we carry them along. And to that extent, I would say that we may have to take a very, very a calculated one step backward, because we ourselves, we are still struggling to emerge as a $5 trillion dollar economy by 2027, and the nation has to work very, very hard for that. If economically you are not strong, in what way you will make all these small grouping of nations economically viable? And if China prevails upon with their economic might, military might, manufacturing might, comprehensive national power, how will you be able to take them on? Xi Jinping not coming to Delhi is, of course, momentarily a very significant thing, in favor of India. But if you see the international relations in an overall aspect, that is of no significance at all. How the aftermath, or how the later on the game will play out, and what will happen behind the closed doors in a diplomatic table, in a multilateral forum or in a bilateral forum. So this is my initial thought to your first question that you asked me, and we can build upon that wherever that is required.
Thank you very much, sir, for a very brilliant introduction to the subject. I would start with a small question that what kind of importance you assign to the recent visit of Kim Jong to Russia and his parades with Putin for about 3 hours. His assurance about supplying the weapons also to the Russian government and standing by with them. How do you look at it?
See, it is there is no doubt, because I will go into a little bit of detail of this so that the answer is put into correct perspective and I am not misunderstood. The importance of the North Korean leader and North Korea has to be understood from the clear-cut perspective of the US. Donald Trump was considered a very impulsive US president. There is no doubt in that. And at times, everybody thought that when the North Korean leader went to the extent of calling the world's most powerful man, who was the US president, a mad dog, and he fired, a missile which was not nuclear armed, but just a missile on the Guam, which is also the US naval base. And as the viewers also must be aware that Hawaii, the Honolulu, is also the headquarters of the Pacific Fleet, and the PACOM, the most important military leader and most powerful military leader of the world, is the Pacific Commander, who is called the PACOM. So he operates from Honolulu, and his headquarters is there in Hawaii. Now he fired there. Everybody thought that US will, with its mega military might and economic might, so they will finish off probably North Korea, and North Korea will go up in flames with the thermonuclear devices of the USA. What happened? Exactly the opposite. The entire US administration, including the National Security Advisor of the Donald Trump, the then president, advised him not to go and meet the North Korean leader. But Donald Trump not went once but twice and shook hands with North Korean leader. That is the power of nuclear deterrence. North Korea is a small nation. If USA wants to just vaporize North Korea, they can do it in a matter of minutes with the kind of the military might or nuclear might that they have. But what has North Korean leader said? That any kind of attack on the North Korean sovereignty, I will fire a nuclear missile on Japan and South Korea, and that will be a start of a nuclear war. And people have not, disproved him, or they have tried to contain him. Rather than people said, "Isko samar lo," we should not unnecessarily provoke him, and just make sure that he does not cross a line. We should not create a situation by which it becomes a pretext or a premise for him to cross the line. And that is the diplomatic, the maturity. So, everybody in the, United States, entire US administration was against Donald Trump. But Donald Trump was that way, he was a gutsy president. He said, no, if something goes wrong, the blame is on my shoulder. But I will go and meet him, shake hands with him. And everything, was tapered down or watered down. Nothing happened. Now, in the current situation, in the geopolitical situation, particularly, when you see it with the context of the, South Korea, Taiwan, Chinese aggressive intent and design on Taiwan, and Russia-China nexus in that region, and Putin trying to nudge NATO, because please remember that the 1/3 of the USSR or the Russian army, it is still standing, waiting for the orders of Putin in Belarus. The entire, the division and the other thing. He has also put nuclear missiles in Belarus. And he has also said that if anything happens, if the NATO gets activated, I will not hesitate to attack the European Union with the tactical nuclear missile. entire the Baltic Sea fleet has been armed with nuclear capability, ready to go into action. And the intelligence reports have been given to the Pentagon by Pentagon to the White House, and everybody is aware about it. That is why all of a sudden you see there is a lull in the Russia-Ukraine war. The big macho image of the US and NATO is now no more in action. Because everybody has said what is there with Russia, let it be with Russia. We don't want to unnecessarily disturb Putin. And Zelensky, don't give him too much of importance. Don't give him too many arms, long-term fighters. They are promising, but they are not giving. There is a lot of difference between that. And that is where they are making a monkey out of Zelensky. And he is not realizing. I'm sorry to use these words, but that's reality. And in that context, the North Korean leader going to Putin and meeting him, it achieves a great strategic significance. Because if things go out of control, what could be, and people will have to, maybe war game this entire scenario. Because just doing a strategic appreciation will not serve the purpose. This entire thing has to be, played out in a war game. That if Putin wants to, I'm just throwing, missiles in the air. It may not, be that way, but this war gaming is necessary. That if things go out of control, Putin holds on to the NATO and the NATO forces in the European theater and tells him that, look, you can fight with me, but we will have a balanced fight. The moment fight becomes imbalanced, I will nuke you. So therefore, he does not allow that fight to become unbalanced fight. So therefore, NATO and US to a large extent gets committed to the European theater. The economy of the European theater in any case goes down the drain. And other side, in the Indo-Pacific region, South China Seas, North Korea, which is called the Korean Peninsula. And I'm sure, sir, you must be aware that the most heavily militarized, the part of the world right now is Korean Peninsula because of Taiwan, China, almost facing eyeball to eyeball. And as of yesterday's, the news, if you see, there were 138 warplanes. They have increased into the Taiwan airspace. And there are 39 Chinese warships. They are patrolling, in the Taiwan Straits. So Taiwan Straits, Korean Straits, South Korea, Japan, China, that is taken care of by China in Taiwan. And Taiwan aggression starts. Now European Union and the America, it gets totally stretched out. And in that scenario, how Russia-China nexus plays out. And if the dollar, and the European economy, becomes weak, on the other side, with the sanctions on Russia not working, if China becomes aggressive, then what kind of, the world scenario develops? So, someone may say that this is, you are unnecessary seeing, a balloon which is not in the air. But, who had, envisaged that Putin will actually call the shots and, and invade Ukraine? From 2007, Putin has been telling the Western countries, don't do this, take me seriously. But they thought he is another vodka drinking, the Russian president, like, the presidents of the past. But Putin was a different man. The West made a mistake in identifying Putin and making an appreciation on him. If what happens if the West, a second mistake is made in judging and appreciating Xi Jinping in Taiwan issue, if not 2023, but maybe by 2025, 26 or 27, if such a scenario develops, because he is waiting for the American economy to just keep deteriorating, China gets little stronger. There is a school of thought that says that Chinese economy is not that strong. It has also stagnated. It is also ballooned up. Now Chinese economy will start coming down. But that is speculation. That is juxtaposition. 80% of the Chinese truth never comes out. Then what do you believe? And in this kind of scenario, what will be India's role? Will it be related to G20 and the bonhomie that we have developed? Because the fundamental charter of G20 is that all the resolutions of G20 from 2008 onwards, they are not enforceable on the member states of G20. And in any case, it's an economic and social, multilateral forum. It has got no charter to take into consideration the strategic or geostrategic or defense, and defense related issues, into consideration. The geostrategic and defense consideration in Delhi meeting came into force. It is only because the fertilizer, energy security, and food security started impinging, very heavily because of the defense security. So therefore, they both started getting enmeshing with each other. So what जो आपने बोला है वो, it's a very relevant issue. You can bypass as of now, because nothing is going to happen all of a sudden that within 2 or 3 months North Korean leader will go haywire and will start firing left, right, and center. But what happens in a closed door meeting, and that too in a Moscow between two these the difficult persons of the world, Putin and the North Korean leader, the world has to take note of it. There is no doubt on it. And I'm sure the various national security advisors of major countries, they must be watching it like a hawk. And the intelligence network must be working day and night to get any kind of input that they get on the meeting of Putin and the North Korean leader. And be rest assured that China is all part and parcel of this. It is not only between these of two. China is also there. So it is basically a trio or a triangle that is, confabulating with each other. And therefore, it achieves a great significance.
Sir, very rightly you said that Chinese economy is not doing well. It's a fact.
It is perceived, sir. It is perceived to be that way. There are no definite indicators. It is still growing. It is still growing, but at a lesser rate, 3 to 4%, as compared to India, which is at 6.5%. But but India, China, there is no comparison.
India is growing on a smaller base. So I fully agree with you and endorse your views that India, China is no comparison. But another rumor that is in circulation is that China within the country, Xi Jinping is finding it difficult to exercise the powers he used to be once. And he is not so comfortable as he was earlier. How much is the truth, you think, in this kind of a rumor?
See, to be very honest, being a nationalistic and being an Indian and an Indian defense officer and now a veteran, India's national interest is always forefront in my mind. I would call it aapke muh mein ghee shankar, if that is happening. But is it really happening that way? Or is it a balloon? Is it mirage that is being created? And if that is the case, what happened in the initial 7, 8, or 9 months of the Russia-Ukraine war? If you listen or if you viewed either the CNN or NBC or Fox, probably one got the idea that Russia is going to get finished off and demolished in the next 15 to 20 days. Everything that Russia was doing was wrong. Russia was getting blasted off left, right, and center. Ukraine is doing very well. Ukraine is advancing, and all possible, the psychological, it is called psyops, and they're creating that kind of a mirage. So it depends what media you are watching, because media is totally in the hands of such kind of people who wants to believe you what they want to write about it. But ultimately, after 18 months, what happened? The sanctions failed. Russians, advanced. 1/5 of the Ukraine is in Putin's hand. Similarly, really, to be very honest with you, I will not, behave as if I have inside knowledge of Chinese economy, because there are no ways to, either you have to, depend on the Western source, or you have to depend on Indian source, or you have to depend on Chinese source. Now, how reliable are they? And how media is, playing the ball with politics It is also one of the, point. Now, if somebody, one group of people comes and says, China is stagnated, Chinese economy is over, China's century is over, I will believe that. Then good luck to me. If I say that no, I will take China with caution and I will keep watching China for next 5 to 7 years, then yes, probably that's the right way to go about it. So without an input, sir, when in military, and trust me, I am from the operation plans and strategy division of the Navy. My life has gone into that. And I was also in charge of the multinational foreign cooperation, defense cooperation. So therefore, I know what I'm talking about it. When you carry out a strategic appreciation or a operational, appreciation, everything depends upon what are the factors that you are viewing it. If your factors are wrong, your plan will be wrong, and therefore the course to be adopted will be wrong. And if that will be a very sad situation, because that will demand a review of the situation again. So it lot depends as to what are the factors you are viewing and how carefully those factors are affecting your psychology. Because if I have a particular psychology where I want to believe that China is finished, then everything I will see from there. So in clear military terms, we call it situating a appreciation and not appreciating a situation. There is a lot of difference between these two, and people go wrong in that. And therefore your staff officers, your formation commanders and your military commanders, they have to be told repeatedly again and again that I hope you have not situated the appreciation. I hope it is an appreciation of the situation. And then the military commander at every level, he must go through that himself to make sure that what is put in front of him in the table it's a real meat and is really pithy and is not a document thrown on your table as a senior officer or a senior political leader.
Thank you, sir. Last question. We have almost 4 to 5 minutes at our disposal. China's publishing these maps at a time when the G20 was going on, do you think might be sort of a forerunner of some design they might have to keep us engaged on the line of control? And on the other side, instigate
Line of actual
Pakistan.
control. No, not
Sorry?
line of control, line of actual control.
Yes,
LAC.
line of actual control. You're right.
Actual control, yeah.
And on the other side, instigate Pakistan also to create limited, some issues for our defense mechanism. In that kind of a scenario, what could be the outcome? We are a mighty nation. We have some of the most professional and best armed forces in the world. Everything fine. But if you open up two fronts and then both the fronts you are attending, what is the possibility that you foresee?
Sir, I will not call it a difficult question or a difficult scenario, but I would call it, at this moment of time, the way the world is poised, a unlikely scenario. So I would call that, because you see, China has published a map. In absolute terms, it has got no meaning. Such kind જેને આપણે કહેવાય ને એવા કાગળિયા તો કેટલાય આવ્યા ને ગયા. That is not a problem. But it has got a larger motive behind it, and therefore you should not they say that the beauty is what lies in between the lines. In this case, what is his motive behind it? Now there is no doubt in that the India's intention having been declared on the floor of the parliament कि पीओके तो लेके ही रहेंगे, and not पीओके but सीओके भी लेके रहेंगे. So that has rattled the Pakistan and Pakistan military, to be very honest with you. And the kind of situation that is in the POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, it went to such an extent where the American, the ambassador, Pakistan, American ambassador to Pakistan also went there and got himself photographed in front of Zina's portrait. That was the worst part of diplomacy from the US side. And all these left a very diplomatic signal that, don't think that Pakistan is alone or Pakistan is isolated. On the other side, Pakistan, virtually at that moment of time, if the media, reports are to be believed, and very credible reports, that they are believed, that Imran and, the Bajwa, they went to Beijing and they cried virtually in front of the Chinese leadership. That, look, if you don't do anything, it will be a situation out of control, and India will take away POK. And that is why you have to create a buffer on the other side, so that India's might on the western border gets bifurcated, and there could be theoretical or hypothetical possibility of a two-front war or a 2.5-front war. And therefore it's the resources gets bifurcated, and India also starts economically getting drained out. So they've achieved very cleverly. There is no doubt on that. Now, the bigger situation will be that if we say that POK is basically, we are taking it back because it's Indian, Kashmir, and therefore we have all the right on the POK, and therefore we are empowered to go into that, despite the fact that the both Lahore Declaration and the and at the time of the Indo-Simla agreement that took place after 71 war, it says the LOC remains unviolable. These are the words, unviolable. So if it's unviolable, and the only person who tried to violate LOC was who, the late famous president, commando president, Kargil war, the maker of the Kargil war. And when he tried to do that, the Americans very clearly told him, honor the LOC. There is no question of you can violate the LOC. And therefore, the Kargil war, the panned out our way. And from other side, Indian army, was so powerful that we threw them on the other side of the LOC. But on the Chinese side, that is why they've started positioning themselves, diplomatically and in the world arena. Nobody will listen to them. But China is China. It is a power. It's a P5 power. Don't forget, he's got a veto power. And therefore, if he says that, look, if the logic is that the POK is yours, and therefore you have gone to recapture POK, we are saying Arunachal Pradesh is ours. And therefore, what stops us from entering Arunachal Pradesh and Tawang? So again, it will end up in a very diplomatic scenario. And in diplomatic scenario, when the time is given, it will be a replica of the Russia-Iraq war, Russia-Ukraine war. Now, you can keep fighting. Any kind of multilateral forum can keep putting pressure on Russia that vacate Ukraine. Putin is saying, go to hell. I am not. I am doing elections over there. Jo karna hai kar lo. I am not vacating. So similarly, it is, and Russia and China is not a power that you have to take it lightly. Therefore, we can contain China at this moment of time. There is no doubt in Himalayas. We can also take on the PLA Air Force, and we can contain PLA Air Force beautifully. We can contain, the PLA Navy to a large extent. But Navy, let's be very honest. And if I don't be honest, then I'll be fooling myself. The Chinese Navy, as of now, numerically and capability wise, is definitely superior to the Indian Navy. But we are second to none. We can give them a very bloody mouth. There is no doubt on that. But is that the aim? Because in military parlance, it is said that if you do not alter the center of gravity to your side within 5 to 7 days of war, then I think you were an idiotic general or an idiotic military officer. You should not have advised your political leader to go into a war which ultimately leads into stalemate. and probably where, you have to start reviewing your plans and you're reviewing, situation. If you go to war, and second thing, the war only starts when diplomacy fails. But what happens with a person like Putin? He says, I don't believe in international diplomacy. I don't believe in rule-based diplomacy. If you harm my interests, I will definitely harm your interests. So keep having n number of meetings on diplomacy and keep saying that diplomacy is the only way to resolve the issue. I don't believe in it. What happens if Xi Jinping says that? And that is why I come back to my first question that you asked me. That when we go and start, closing up or, cozying up with Americans, we have to be very careful. Here is an adversary who's sitting right on your border. And here is America, which is 6,000 miles away. Though it is a military, very powerful, mighty nation. But make sure that we get the promises, requisite promises, that you will not let us down. Because alone, you cannot take on China. Many people will not like this. We can give them a bloody nose. We can make sure that we can contain China. We can make sure we can confront China. But we cannot overpower China in totality in the current scenario. So if somebody wants to disprove that, he has to come and speak with me and say that, yes, because of so and so reason, you are wrong. And I know what I'm talking about. So there is no harm in containing China. There is no harm in containing China. The Americans and the NATO countries for decades, and not 1, 2, 3, 5 to 6 decades, they contained Soviet Union, ex-Soviet Union, beautifully. And they demolished the Soviet Union with the help of Gorbachev. Because Gorbachev broke Soviet Union from within. There is no doubt. And people of Russia or ex-Soviet Union, they've never, pardoned, Gorbachev for the damage that they've done he has done to the pride of Soviet Union. And Putin was one of the young leaders when Soviet Union was getting flittered away. He could never adjust to that idea that his own motherland has been, bifurcated into 10 pieces. And it has gone in the hands of NATO countries. And that is why, step by step, Putin has first taken what? Georgia, then Crimea, then part of Ukraine. And now he has told that even the NATO countries, that don't be sure, you could be on my plate next day.
Thank you, sir. I think there are few questions which still remain, but maybe we'll have it second time when we meet. And by that time, some more developments also as a sort of fallout effect of Delhi Declaration might happen. So sure. I have a compulsion to stop here. Thank you so much, sir, for making yourself available for such an involved discussion. And we really enjoyed it very much with your deep insights into the strategic matters and the world military movements and the military power. Thank you so much, sir. We look forward to you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Privilege to be on your channel and on your program, sir. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.